tell you a bit about my family business, and I'll also explain why there's a kind of tailor on your chair, I'm sure you're wondering why. So in 1931, on the colourful Petticoat Lane Market, there were queues of people outside a family shop called Jason's. Now, Mr. Sidney Jason and his wife had just opened the doors to their first store, and it was quickly becoming like a hotspot, a place to be to buy luxury and exotic fabrics. It was like the Harrods of the generation for luxury fabrics. So during this time, my great-grandfather Hyman, he was selling a completely different type of fabric. He was a smart, polished man. He was also a master tailor, and he was buying army parachutes, surplus army parachutes, selling them into shirts and selling them in market stores. So in 1952, my grandfather Joel joined him in the family business, and they began selling their fabrics all over the market stores across the east of England. So Joel was a young, handsome, athletic and strong guy, and he was incredibly hard-working. They would travel from village to village every day selling their wares. In those days, it wasn't uncommon for people to make shirts and suits and everything out of fabric from markets, so it was a very different time to today. So they'd pack up their van late in the evening, and once the last customer had left, and that was their life. For years, they were working in market stores. So 20 years later, in the 1970s, my grandfather Joel, with his new wife Danielle, took over the business from my great-grandfather Hyman. So together they continued in Hyman's footsteps and kept working the markets day in and day out. And then in 1976, my father joined. My father, being a new generation, wasn't too happy working the markets 4 to 5 days a week, travelling out of England full-time, out of London 4 to 5 times a week. And he found a market store close to home in Church Street, off the Edgware Road. And they set up a market there. So as their first time trading in London on Church Street, it was quickly becoming clear that London was the place to be. And after a fire, around the same time, they completely destroyed all my grandfather's stock. They decided maybe the markets, it's time to open a store. The markets weren't doing so great. It's time to be a bit more sheltered. So Church Street Market was where they opened their store. It was a busy, vibrant location. It was a fantastic place because it was an international clientele that would often walk up and down the market. It was in Bond Street where Jason's were doing so well, but it didn't matter because there was a magical presence to Church Street. So with an ethos from Hyman's training to treat their customers with 5-star service and only sell the finest qualities that they started to source from around the world, Joel and Son had opened the doors. They actually opened the doors in a small old butcher shop, which was opposite their first market store on Church Street Market. But without having a budget for fancy shop fittings, Joel and my father Gary stacked fabrics on wooden boxes and fruit boxes, and they bought all their shop fittings from an auction. The success to this day was always been in the product. My grandparents and father are really good buyers, and at the time silk was very limited, but they had connections in France, Italy and Switzerland, and they were bringing it in and selling it at really low prices. So this was the start of something big, the turning point for the family business. So over the years, my grandparents and father realised that their all-or-nothing work ethic and loyal staff were a winning formula. So slowly they were becoming synonymous and real competition to the other established textile shops at the time. So they started to rapidly expand, and Joel and Son became one of the hottest stores in London. So Joel and Danielle had hired and trained the young staff, and we're actually quite lucky. Most of the staff are still with us today, 30-something years on. So my father Gary runs the store now, and my grandparents have recently retired. In the late 90s, we received a royal warrant from Her Majesty the Queen of England, and she's actually a long-standing customer of ours. My grandfather Joel describes this day as the most privileged day of his business life, saying that the royal warrant represents the first-class nature of the store today. Joel and Son today is the most recognised fabric store in the world. We have an international clientele. We work with the best fashion designers and dressmakers and tailors. We work on the biggest film projects and theatre productions and have something for everyone. We have something for the local dressmakers or even down to future designers who come into our store out of Central St Martin's and other fashion colleges and universities. So today we're still located in Church Street, except now we have 8 units of stores instead of 1. We've expanded a lot. We also have our e-commerce division, which is what I set up and what I'm here to talk to you about today. So for me, growing up in the family business, I grew up running around the aisles of the store. I got to work with my grandparents and my father as they expanded the store. my grandfather actually kept to his roots. Every bank holiday, he ran a market in Cambridge, and we used to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, throw a blanket in the car, and go and help him. We'd help him with the fabric store and the running of the market, and as a kid, that was a great experience. And they say musicians don't retire, they just stop when they have no music left in them. And my grandfather Joel still has music left in him, even today, in his late 70s. I hear from him daily. He can be in the Far East or on a beach in Florida. I get a phone call every day, without a doubt, asking what's happening in the store, what the updates are, or check the website and ask for what's going on, what's happening with the business. But I never imagined joining a family business. So being the fourth generation in the store is a really daunting notion. My passion was film, and I worked in a film production company. I studied film at the Met Film School, and leaving school at 16, that was what I thought I'd end up doing, working in film. It wasn't until one weekend where I did help my father on the weekends occasionally in the store, and we got one of those phone calls asking for our opening and closing times. I said 9 till 5:30, but I had one of those light bulb moments. Why do we have to close the store? Our customers still want to come in and shop with us and can't make our weekly opening times. But business in the 21st century is now done online. So I started imagining a store that never closed, a store where we could be asleep or on our day off, and customers still shopping with us. Now, let's go one step further. Imagine having a store in everybody's home in every corner of the world. That's really what the internet is. Those were the words I used to pitch my grandfather and father the store, at least. And we discussed the idea for months. We had finally decided to give it a go, but we already had a website, and it was a bit of a failure. It didn't do well. We didn't get much traffic. It was very basic. It had some images and a little info on the company. The little investment that we put into the site at the time was just a clear lack of understanding of what was achievable online. But being very old school, my grandfather Joe was very unsure of the internet. I mean, he battled me against it. He thought it was a crazy idea, and not being part of the generation, he didn't understand other ways of selling. And trying to convince him was almost like trying to climb Everest without oxygen. It was impossible. You see, our website had hit that speed bump, and it was dark and tiresome on the eyes, and people were leaving it, and it didn't sell. We didn't have products online. We weren't selling online. It was just written off. The whole notion of it was written off. I made the argument, though, that we hit a speed bump, and we can't just give up on it. And with a bit of redesign and rethink and come up with a new strategy, we could possibly have a great site. So I told my grandfather and father the story of a pharmacist back in 1886 in Atlanta, Georgia. His name was John Pemberton, and he was a strong, masculine man with a thick beard and a charming persona. And John was experimenting with syrups and chemicals. He was trying to create a great tasting beverage, and his first attempt was a failure. The drink, which was full of sugar and syrups, was flat due to the fact that John had used still water instead of carbonated water, which at the time was really popular thanks to Johann Jacob Schweppes, who was the founder of the Schweppes Company. John hit his speed bump and failed, but would not let the fact that his first attempt was unsuccessful defeat him. He went back to the drawing board and rethought his idea and recreated it. He used this time the preferred carbonated water, which was so popular thanks to Schweppes, and his drink was an instant success. It resonated with the American people, and it tasted fresh. It was cleverly repackaged and to the clever colour red that we all know today. And that was the start of the Coca-Cola Company. And we all know the Coca-Cola Company today. It's one of the largest companies in the world. It all goes to show that had John Pemberton given up with the first setback, had he not made that one small change, the world of soda would have been a very different place. So after this, we looked again at our site. I was given the go-ahead with a small team and a small budget to plan a site that could possibly work for us. Although it was still a struggle to convince my grandfather and father, we wanted the site to be a reflection of our store and brand. We looked at three key components, which were great design, photography, and customer service. So in a bricks and mortar retail environment, there's something that can't be translated onto the internet. The one thing you lose is sales staff, because a good salesperson can sell you anything, something you don't want or don't need. You can't do that online. You lose that dialogue between your customer and your sales staff. So when you walk into the Joel & Son store, our staff are expected to wish the customer a good morning, a good afternoon, to offer them a tea or coffee, offer them anything they might need in assistance. Well, we wanted our customers to leave the store and not feel like we've just been shopping, but instead just had a great experience. and an experience they can tell their friends and family about. My grandfather was actually quite inspired by Walt Disney. His school of thought on customer service was quite unusual, and he actually applied a lot of Disney's customer service techniques to our business. So these subtle techniques he used are actually applied still today in our store. So Walt Disney was the master of customer service. We should all try and learn a few things from him. Disney is one of the largest entertainment companies in the world and is run purely on customer service. So for Mr. Walt Disney, customer service is so important he actually built a university around it. It's where every Disney staff member, from his hotel staff to the waiters in his restaurants, even down to the cleaners who look after the theme park, Disneyland, are trained in the art of customer service. Walt wanted you to enter the Disneyland park and always be smiling. He had an attention to detail that goes far and beyond what you might think. Excuse me. I've had a cold the last few days. So. Should you walk down Main Street, you may not have noticed the smell, but Disney pumped vanilla around down the street. So your brain thinks your trigger senses that in your brain that you're having a good time. If you stop and ask for directions in Disneyland, you'll be embraced with a smile, which is a fundamental rule for working at Disney. You'll also be directed, if you ask for directions, with 2 or more fingers, even a full hand, as in some cultures using 1 finger is perceived as rude. Selfridges in London also use psychology and psychological approaches to their business and store layout. So if you notice your next visit to Selfridges, how the store is set out, when you walk in via the food court and brought in via your sense of your smell, from your nose, you either get brought in by the sense of smell from the bakery or from the perfume department. Again, the sweet, flowery smell of perfume brings you into the store. Just like a supermarket, how all your essentials are like milk, bread, and bread at the back of the store. You have to walk through the desserts and frozen food aisles to actually get to the section you're looking for. So Selfridges has done the same thing with the placement of their men's and women's wear store. So to get to those departments, you have to walk through the lavish and luxury halls of handbags and jewellery to take you to lifts to get to those departments. And once you reach those departments, have you ever noticed how it's a little bit too hot? It's because they alter the temperature, so you might be hot enough to take off your jacket or coat, because you're actually more comfortable shopping without a jacket on. Have you noticed you might be standing on carpet in these departments? Research also shows that when you're standing on carpet, you feel more comfortable shopping, and you actually spend more money. So these tried and tested methods are used again and again around the world and for generations, and Joel and Son have tried to implement some of these. But customer service was the main thing he took away. Customer service and customer interaction is so important. It's one of the fundamental rules, and it's what's made Joel and Son the store it is today. But how do we translate that online was one of the serious concerns my grandfather voiced. So we like to think of customer service like a magic show. So to the audience, it's full of surprise and wonder. The audience watching has no idea what they're witnessing and how the magician is creating these effects and illusions. But not knowing this is a big part of the fun. However, from the magician's perspective, if you flip it, it's entirely different. So to the magician, this show is a highly practical process made up of a series of well-rehearsed and well-planned steps designed to enchant and delight the audience. And this is what customer service is. This is what it should entail, keeping customers happy and in the illusion at all times. So we tried very hard to think of real ways to create our customer service we pride ourselves on online. And we had the basics, an info email, a telephone number, those type of things, but we took it one step further. We had an idea, a very simple idea, we called the personal shopper. So the personal shopper page is designed where customers can visit and ask questions about whatever they're looking to buy. It's almost a chat room, but via email. There's a phone number to offer the older generations a human voice is still available. But it shows them that they can put together a combination of fabric and regain their dialogue with the sales staff and put together whatever they're looking for in a way that isn't complicated and scary when shopping online. We found that small features actually increase the customer experience on our site. It's helped customers locate and put combinations together like never before. And Joel didn't just want our customers to show up on our site, browse and leave. That would be so ordinary, and he always strives to do something extraordinary. So we studied customer service like an art, and we looked at product photography. we quickly embraced that product photos were our potential sales staff online. And when we looked at colour a lot and how to design our site. And when used online, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we studied what colours to make the page of our website to keep customers engaged and not tire their eyes. The colour black when used online makes your eyes tired, and customers will soon click out of your site if you say you had a neutral or lighter colour as a background. You should know that colours and symbols mean different things to consumers in different markets. So some interesting examples would be that blue and red are often associated with patriotism in America, but in China it's known as a symbol often recognized with health. Green in Europe is considered with cycling and nature, but in South America it is associated with death. So opening up our shop doors to the world meant embracing and understanding how our site was viewed. Should it be from a beach hut on the coast of Australia to home in Nigeria? We wanted everyone to enjoy their time on our site. And there's usually no second chance online. If your customer doesn't like your site, they're going to leave and you risk them never returning. Statistics actually show that it only takes 0.56 of a second for a customer to decide if they're going to stay and shop on your site or leave. And they kind of thin slice your business and make an instant intuitive decision to stay and shop or leave the page. So we ensured for customers visiting our website for the first time that it should feel like second nature. We kept the background consistent in white. It's easy on the eyes, and research shows it's the best colour to use in e-commerce. Then we looked at photography. So photography, in my opinion, is the most important part of having a good website. So investing in good quality photography equipment and lighting equipment is really important, because if your product looks like it's been photographed on a dimly lit table on in a horrible lighting and the colours all over the place, you're going to put your customer off. So we spent about 15 to 20 minutes photographing each fabric, and then 15 minutes to 30 minutes editing each photo with the fabric in front of us, just so it's as close to the product as possible. We quickly embraced that banners are also like potential sales staff, so we update those as often as possible. And we realised that building a website may seem easy and a quick solution to joining the 21st century, but it's not as simple as that. There's so much more to consider, and social media is also becoming a massive part. There's a few things that everyone knows Facebook, everyone should be on Facebook, because it's part of our culture today. It's a great way for customers to share your content in the best place, to update your customers on changes to your business. Also things like Twitter, which I personally hate, because it gives you the freedom of speech that you want, but 140 characters, which is nothing. It's the best place to deal with customer service though, because customers are now trained that if they have a problem, they send you a quick tweet. And if you're responsive enough, you'll just ensure that your business is a service and customer-friendly based business. Instagram as well is a great place to share content. Those are the key three, I think, that are very important today. There's so much more to consider when joining the company. I could go on all day. I had to learn a whole new set of skills when I joined my company, and I'm not university educated. I've already gained all the knowledge I have from specific books. Books are powerful sources of information to me, and I always ask suppliers and marketers and anyone who comes in for a meeting to write down their 2 favourite books, the books that really inspire them. So you guys notice you have a Play-Doh and a pen and paper on your floor. There's so many entrepreneurs in here today. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask you all to write down 2 books you'd recommend to each other. And I'm going to email you all the answers. You can leave your paper on the chair after. I'll email you all the answers. Let's see what everyone suggests. There should be some really interesting answers here. Yeah. My family business is fabrics. My family business is fabrics. Yours could be art or fashion. It could be a family key cutting business. And working with family is full of challenges. Sometimes it feels like you're interjecting your home life with your personal life, but it isn't easy. If you work hard and you prove yourself and don't slack off, and it kind of shows that you're ready, capable of doing the jobs you're given, and your fellow colleagues will really respect you for it. It's also really hard as a young generation in a family business to bring in new systems. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, is something I get yelled at all the time. But generally speaking, I'm part of the generation with technology on our side. which makes it easier for us to simplify processes with the technology. So at the moment at Joe & Son, we're trialing our own version of the iPad receipt. It's exactly like our handwritten receipts, which is actually the way we've been doing receipts since the business started by hand. It looks exactly the same, except instead of using calculators to calculate the bills with a handwritten touch, it's now done on the iPad with the calculators incorporated into the app, done for you almost. It's not a massive change, but to a business like mine, where everything is quite far behind, it's massive for us. Technology is so advanced and there's so many new ways of simplifying processes and problems. It's really just about thinking outside the box. Just try new ideas, and if they work, then great, and if it doesn't, just keep dreaming, because eventually one of them will work. When we look back at businesses over the last few centuries, it's really easy to say, I could have done that, or the world was a very different place back then, but it's never too late. Little things like two brothers, Mac and Dick, temporarily closing their father's hot dog restaurant for 3 months in Lakewood Boulevard in Downey, California. They reopened 3 months later with 2 changes. The first was, instead of hot dogs, they now sold hamburgers. And the second was they took inspiration and tweaked the assembly line that the Henry Ford car company were using at the time. Doing so invented the fast food industry with a company called McDonald's. Let me tell you about Elmer Doolin, who convinced Walt Disney to open a new Mexican-themed restaurant called Casa de Fritos in Frontierland back in 1955 in the first Disneyland. One of the staff once noticed a tortilla in the garbage and decided to cut them up into triangles and deep fry them and add some spice. This became a really big hit around the park, and that eventually went on to be called Doritos. So in 50 years' time, our kids and grandkids will be saying the same thing about 2016. We'll be the next generation of people to reinvent processes and tweak our businesses so that our grandkids and kids can talk about the past, our present, the same way we talk about the past today. So thank you guys for hearing me for the last 20 minutes ramble on. I'm going to just tell you a bit about Play-Doh now. Does anybody know the story behind Play-Doh? No one. Okay. So this stuff was invented in central Ohio as a white cleaning goo. It was used to remove soot off of wallpapers caused by the burning coal. When electric heating came out, there was no longer a need for the white cleaning goo, and it was called the Couture wall cleaner, and it was going out of business. The guy who invented it, his name was Joe McVicker, and he had a sister-in-law called Kay Zufal. Kay Zufal ran a nursery and discovered that her kids liked squeezing the goo, and suggested to her brother-in-law Joe that they colour the stuff and call it Play-Doh. One of the biggest companies in the toy industry today. So keep hold of this colourful goo. It's kind of a reminder, I like to think of it as a reminder, that we're all just one small step away from changing the way our businesses work. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Coby. Was it great?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Don't put this on TV. Any questions for Coby?
Fantastic, mate. Really, Jesus, so much. I've written down lots. So thank you for that, especially the colours thing on websites. Changing the colours of my website. It's black. So seriously, guys. Yeah, it's really interesting. I love the story that you, at 16, you kind of running up the aisles, doing the odd weekend there, but you kind of couldn't see yourself in there. And then suddenly, and as you talk more, it's clear that you were destined to be in there, your thought process and stuff. So how did that change occur?
So I worked in film production and I loved it. I was 16, and my first day of the job, I was Julia Roberts' assistant on.
You were Julia Roberts?
Yeah, on the You Pray Love For Me. I just left school. So my friends were doing their GCSEs and they were calling me up going, what are you doing tonight? I said, I'm doing my first job. I'm actually Julia Roberts' assistant tonight. I was petrified. I loved my job. And the idea came from the website because I could just see there was something that needed to be done there. Like, we have so many customers now who shop with us who've never shopped with us before. So people like in Australia who don't even know our brand are finding us through Google and shopping with us online, and it's peculiar.
So I see that, but you went from, is it because you could then see your place in the business, which you couldn't see before, because you could then see the value you could add to it, is that right?
Kind of. Actually, I read an article about Jeff Bezos. He wrote a really good book called Delivering Happiness. Do you guys know who that is? That's the guy who made Zappos, the shoe company. And he had this amazing article about how he started his business, how he started selling shoes online, and how he had this ridiculous 12-hour customer service call where he and the guy on the other end of the service call, they were trying to return a pair of shoes, and they ended up ordering the customer a pizza just so they could continue talking. I just thought, well, that's really interesting. That's completely crazy. They actually sold to Amazon for, I don't know the exact amount, but it was in its billions back in 2009. So I remember reading about that and just thought, well, the internet is clearly full of possibilities, and as much as I love film, I can always revisit that, and maybe it's time to try this.
Brilliant, thank you.
Any other question? Hi.
I'm really interested in this one because we have a product that's very tactile, which obviously textiles have as well. If I think of myself in a textile shop, obviously colour is the first thing. The second thing is the touch. How do you convey that on the website?
So there's two answers to that. One is samples. We'll send you out a sample. I think we charge £5 for that, but you get refunded that if you actually buy the product. Actually, interestingly enough, with technology, talking about the future of technology, we were just in touch with a company here in Switzerland, and they're developing a new computer screen. This is way advanced. This is like something out of Terminator. But it actually lets you touch whatever you're. Trying to look at online. So the idea is they actually look using us because we have such a vast selection of fabrics. The idea is that one day you'll actually just be able to touch your screen and feel the fabric. But until then, it's about sending out samples, about having some sort of return policy. Once you cut fabric, it's really hard to take back because you cut it for a specific length. But that's a really tricky one. It's good photography because we spend so much time. I think we spend about 45 minutes taking a single product, and we have 10,000 on our site. It's crazy. The colours need to be completely correct, because if I look at it on my iPad, and you look at it on your computer from home, and you look at it from your iPhone, they're all going to be a little bit different. If it's as close to the product as possible, then there shouldn't be as many problems, and that's how we deal with that. Yeah.
One last question, Robin.
Can you tell us a little bit how, once you went on the internet, like within the first year, how did your business have to change or grow?
Okay, so we went on the internet, and we had no idea. So Christmas time is the quietest time of year for us in store. Most of our customers come from overseas, and I think we launched in November actually. So it was all quiet, and then Christmas started becoming really busy. Became really busy in Australia, and we never had a customer from Australia before. And we were actually getting customers who were spending $999.99, same as earlier. It was the most bizarre thing. We never had a customer from Australia. Now they're spending just under $1,000 Australian dollars every time. Turns out there's a tax law in Australia that under $1,000 they don't pay tax.
Yeah.
So we found a little niche there. We found loads of working with SEO and pay-per-click. We found lots of traffic coming in from the United States, and it was a very weird time. Like, we were still learning. Things like the shipping were a nightmare because shipping fabrics is hard enough, but we're trying to lower the prices enough so we can offer a customer to ship it to New Zealand, to China, to America without killing them on the shipping costs. So we were still learning. The first 8 months was a bit of a maze and a mystery. It was like a complete learning curve the whole time. There were so many things that came up. We once photographed, and they're still on the site actually, embarrassingly, we once photographed the whole bridal range, and we photographed them on a red background so they don't look like bridal fabrics. So little things like that, no one bought that. We eventually changed it and put a white background behind them, and like I talked about colours, and they're all selling incredibly well now. So it was little things we realised early on that, you know, the internet's a weird place, and once you're on it, you just kind of learn as you go. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Coby.